Hi, this is Kim McLaughlin. Welcome to the Feed Your Soul with Kim podcast. And today we have a special edition. I recently had an anti-diet revolution where we took questions from the audience. And today you get to hear these questions and my answers. We are talking about all things having to do with solutions. What is your emotional eating solution? And really great doables for you to do today. Have a listen. This is a great podcast for you to get some clarity on emotional eating. Let's get started. I am so excited to have you here. Today is day 5. It's a bonus day, actually, of our 4-day anti-diet revolution challenge. We had the last 4 days last week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 4 days of really action-packed information. And today is the Q&A. I have questions. People have been sending them in to me. If you have a question while you're live on Facebook, please feel free to put it in the chat. I've got a lot of questions that people have sent in, so no worries. And if we can't get to all of them, I will do another Q&A, or I'll go live, or I'll do something, or send out a video on the rest of the questions, because I want to make sure that everybody has their questions answered. Because what we've been talking about with the anti-diet revolution is we have been talking about things that are super different than what you're used to, seeing. And so I want to kind of give you a chance to digest what we've gotten. I love all these food analogies, food words, to digest what we've been saying last week. Start doing your doables. And then today we get to kind of round it up and ask lots of questions and put some more pieces together in that puzzle that is your emotional eating solution. Last week on Monday, we talked about the diet mindset and what that means, about why it is important to jump off of that. Tuesday, what did we talk about? We talked about, am I hungry? Am I hungry? The starting spot, figuring out your body and starting to figure out, am I hungry? The next thing we did on Wednesday, why is my mind going blank? There we go. On Wednesday, we talked about emotions and how emotions get in the way and lead us to overeat. And then Thursday, we talked about nurturing yourself, the difference between nourishment and nurturing, and how to nurture yourself. I loved it. I've been putting the question out about how do you nurture yourself, and people have been coming up with some fabulous ideas about what they do. The thing I know is that when we talk about how we nurture ourselves, we inspire others. So I'm going to keep that thread going and ask pretty regularly, how are you nurturing yourself? Because that is one of the pieces to the puzzle of how we get out of emotional eating. I'm looking down in Facebook. I'm not seeing any questions. So I'm going to go to the questions that I got in advance. And they're really good. I think they're going to apply to all of you. Oh, the other thing is if you want to get the recordings for the other 4 days that we've done, Feed Your Soul community, all the videos are there, and you can have access to them and really watch them and get all the goodies that you need for yourself to understand. I recommend you go 1, 2, 3, 4, but possibly one of them, possibly right today, you're needed to know more ideas about nurturing. So go in and watch that one. If another day you're really concerned about hunger, go into the Am I Hungry video, because you can take them out of order, and you just really need to do what works for you. And that's a lot about what we talk about is I have ideas, but it's got to be integrated. This is actually how and why we move out of the dieting mindset, is that we tend to follow rules that say, this is how you do it. I give you guidelines, I give you suggestions, and then we talk about and look about how does that get integrated for you. So it's your program, not my program. So it's your way of living your life and what works right for you. And also it is what works at this at this stage in your life, at this developmental stage in your life. Because I got to say, my idea of nurturing was different in my 20s, my 30s, my 40s. And so every decade, you have something different coming at you. Physical, all of you know that, is different each decade. So we have to then kind of reimagine our food. And so we always come back literally to the table and say, what's my right way to do this? So it's really for you to figure it out. And that's actually, in just a little bit, we're going to talk about emotional eating solutions, my signature system to help you move through emotional eating. But I first wanted to go into, because actually that was one of the questions about, tell me more about emotional eating solutions. And no, I did not set anybody up to ask that question. It was just a question because once we start looking at these ideas in the anti-diet revolution, people go, oh, that is interesting. I like that. I want more. And that's good. And if it doesn't resonate for you, that's fine. But if it does, you got to get into something to do the more. My one question I had was somebody stating that they said, Kim, I don't diet anymore. Does your information still address me and what I need? And that was really so interesting because when we talk about an anti-diet revolution, what happens if you aren't engaging in dieting? I thought that was so interesting, that question. So there are a couple of things I'm going to do. One is check yourself and see, actually, are you emotionally eating? Because it might be that you've moved out of dieting, but you're engaging in emotional eating and just you've let go of the dieting component. So that is interesting to me. Or another way of looking at it is you might not be dieting, but you feel dysregulated with food. What I thought of when I heard this question, I thought, well, you might not think that you're dieting. And so you're not engaging in dieting. You haven't bought a diet. And it's like, right, I'm not doing any of that. And so let's go a little deeper. Let's go a little deeper than that. And I decided to look at the Am I an Emotional Eater quiz. This actually is an opt-in that I have that actually I'll put it in the chat so you can see this is a quiz for you to look at to see if any of this resonates for you. So here we go. Am I an emotional eater quiz? 1, do you eat when you're not hungry? Do you eat when you're not hungry? That's a super good question. And what I find is that everybody that I work with says, heck yeah, I eat when I'm not hungry. So see yourself in that one. Second one is, do you think about food most of the time? That's a good question, right? Do you feel guilty, upset, or ashamed after you eat? Do you see a pattern of overeating due to stress, loneliness, boredom, depression, or worry? Is there a pattern about these feelings that come up for you? Do you overeat and not know why? Do you crave food for no apparent reason? That just kind of like, boom, I just want to have something. Generally, it becomes something sweet or salty or kind of with more oils in it. Do you crave food for no apparent reason? Do you feel upset when you have gained weight or that you might gain weight? Like I binged last night, or I ate too much, or I'm eating too much, and that you are worried about your body and that you might get heavier. Do you eat more often than planned? Like I end up eating something and going, dang, I didn't even think I was going to eat, and I just ate. That's like that. I work with a lot of nurses, and they say, there's stuff that's left on the counter, and they just walk by and pick it up. I've heard this story multiple times from nurses, is that, they'll walk by, the people are so kind, they leave food for you. The families are happy that you've helped save the life of their loved one. And so they put it there, and then you walk by and you eat it. So do you eat more often than what you plan? And you go, oh my gosh, I didn't even plan to eat that, and I just ate something I didn't plan on. Do you fear having quote unquote bad food in your house? Oh my gosh, this is a big one, that idea of good versus bad food. And do you go on diet after diet, losing then regaining the weight? And so do you see there's a lot of questions here that are not dieting? I want you to just consider, are these questions, what do I say here? And so how many times did you answer yes? If you answered 1 or 2 questions with a yes, you might not eat for emotional reasons. But if you eat for more than 3 questions with yes, you might be eating for emotional reasons. So just consider that you might not be engaging in dieting or what you think is dieting, but there might be some patterns that are associated with emotional eating that are causing you struggle. So just it's something to look at. I thought that was a really good question because when I call it the anti-diet revolution, one person said, well, I don't actually diet, so I'm not sure that this fits for me. Well, if you fit, it might be that last one. Do you go on diet after diet? Might not be what you're doing or haven't done for a while, but those other questions might be up for you. And so it is something for you to get some help in these other areas, because any of those other areas in this list are things that can feel out of control. So starting with that kind of determining, does this fit for me? Those questions really help you determine, does this fit for me? Is this something that is a problem for me? And if you answered yes to more than 3, then I would say, yeah, probably is. And that's what we talk about in the program, is all of those areas. Dieting is just one of the lots of areas. That's where that is. And so I'm going to talk about the 6 components a little bit, because that was another question. Kim, can you describe more about emotional eating solutions? And this is the signature course that we have that is, it's 6 modules: physical, emotional, mental, lifestyle, which is social, and mindfulness and self-love. 6 components. Those 6 components they need to be, I think of it like a puzzle where they come together and they all fit nicely together. And there's sometimes where one of those areas are up for you more than another. Sometimes the things going on in my head, the thoughts might be something. So what the physical, emotional, mental, the thoughts in my head might be up for me a lot. And so that's the area that I work on. And then it could be thoughts about my body. So I work on the physical and the mental and kind of see how they combine together. These ideas of this being these puzzle pieces that might not be fitting together really well. It's 6 areas that we look at. So there are the 6 components, and in emotional eating solutions, we go over those 6. So 6 of the weeks is on each of those components. What's really cool is that, so there's 1 week just on physical, right? So you can really get into what's up for me about the physical, and we'll have an audio, there are some videos, and there are downloads. So you can really work on it all week long. Just like we did with this challenge, I think that there's no way to move through emotional eating or end dieting if you don't have some kind of actionable item. We can think things through, or we can say, I have insight into all of these things, but until we have some action items that we literally follow through on, there's not going to be any kind of result. So this is learning, insight, action oriented. And what I love about it is that you can come back to it. So if the emotional component is up for you, which is it's the 3rd weekend, if the emotional component is up for you, then you can go back and look at it. So there are 6 weeks, and why emotional component is in the 3rd week is because the 1st week is about welcome and diet mindset. It's a lot about statistics and what goes on in that diet mindset that got us set up in the wrong direction. Because I want you to work through for yourself, what has dieting meant for you, what's worked and what hasn't, because there's a piece of that did work in dieting until it didn't work. So we talk about the very first week. The second week is other parts of physical, and we work on the physical component. In the second week is on hungry and full. It's a whole system we have developed, a whole system about how to measure hungry and full, because what happens when we're not connected in our body, which is what happens when we diet all the time, we're not connected in our body. We have to come back and be connected to, am I hungry and am I full? And then what should I eat? Those are scary questions, you guys. Those are scary questions that I've had lots of conversations with people about how to move through Am I hungry or am I full? And can I trust my body? That physical component is so important. And we go in depth about hungry and full and what is my right food? How do I know when to eat? How do I know what to eat? Oh my goodness, so much juiciness in all of that. And then the third week is emotions, where we talk about emotions. A lot of those questions that were in that quiz we just went over are in the third week. In the emotions component, the fourth week is the mental and all the thoughts. I got to tell you, the thought part was a lot of my struggle when I was working through this program myself, because all the things I ask of you are all things I've done too. So I've done it also. And actually I do it every once in a while. I go back and go do it. The mindset is for me really important. And then the next component we talk about is lifestyle. And that's a lot about all of the people around you going into work, going to school, at home, holidays, vacations. Those are really big questions that people have throughout the year. How do I manage these things? And we talk about that a lot in lifestyle. And then the next is mindfulness. And that is how you're physically connected, emotionally, mentally, spiritually connected. And that is a huge component in terms of getting centered. That mindfulness blends so well with physical. I love the way those two puzzle pieces work together because they help each other out. And you've got to be connected to that mind, body, spirit connection. And that is mindfulness. And then the seventh week is self-love. Self-love, we talked about a little bit last week, that it's such an important component because it is that looking at how do I love myself? How do I nurture myself? Actually, we have in every component different types of nurturing. There's a different type of nurturing that we can do around self-love. And there's a different kind of nurturing we can do around mindfulness, and a different kind of nurturing around holidays and lifestyle, a different nurturing around our mindset and around emotions and around our physical. So that nurturing comes in all of the components, and self-love is one of the most important. What I find in everybody I've talked to is that they have some form of self-hatred, self-loathing, really disliking themselves. If I could put self-love first, I would. But what I've found repeatedly is what shows up first is the physical and the diet mindset. And how do I get in touch with my body around food? And so we start there. Self-love is super duper important. And then the last week, our eighth week, this is what was confusing is I was asked, Kim, you have 6 weeks, 6 components, but why do you have an 8-week course? Well, the first week is about diet mindset and getting you situated and getting you into thinking about things differently. And that's that first week. And so the second week is the first component. The last week is the 8th week, and that is a wellness plan. This does you no good if I don't set you up for success. And success means you have a plan of action. And that is a wellness plan. When we have a wellness plan, we have step by step what we're going to do to remember those things that worked for us, and also have triggers to know when things aren't working. It's really important to know, when am I off track and when am I on track? Because when I'm on track, let's do more of that. And when I'm off track, first I've got to notice it and then know, what am I going to do about it? How do I notice that I'm off track? And then what do I do about it to get back to where I want to be? These things are critical. So that's why it's 8 weeks. The other thing that's so cool about Emotional Eating Solutions is once a month we get together and we have Q&A. Just like we have Q&A where I take all of the questions and I answer them, we do that once a month in Emotional Eating Solutions. What's lovely is you can ask them in advance. I know everybody has such a busy schedule, so it's hard to get the time to come in live and talk. And sometimes it's embarrassing to talk about food issues, to be seen around that. And I honor that. So I let people put in their questions in advance and I answer them. So we do that once a month in Emotional Eating Solutions. Also, during that Q&A, sometimes we have a little, like, whatever is up for people that I'm hearing in with my private clients, we talk about that as kind of a little learning lesson so that you have extra information. Lots of things for you to keep you going. So those are the questions I'm looking to see. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. So I'm going to go on with the ones that I got. Here's one that I was asked in advance, and it's, why do we emotionally eat? Why do we overeat? Oh my goodness. I could answer this a lot of ways. One is there is the fact of dieting leads us to overeat because of that restrict, binge, shame, restrict cycle that we talked about last week. So that is one thing that sets us up, but we've gotten confused with what food is for. Food is for nourishment. Food is for nourishment. And when we have a lot of things going on and life seems to be out of control, not blending well, we can tend to eat because eating tastes good. It just tastes good. So it's this thing that we do that helps us feel good. If I'm feeling upset and I eat, I feel good. And I feel good until I don't feel good. It's a short-lasted feel good moment. If I'm feeling upset, let's say I come home from work, I'm stressed and I overeat. I feel good for a moment because yummy, the food tastes good, right? It feels good going down and I feel good and I feel loved and cared for. And then there's a point where that stops. And then we go into the feeling upset, angry, overwhelmed, possibly your tummy hurts, fear of gaining weight, fear of what's going to happen to your body. Some people break out. Some people get rashes and reactions to certain foods, and they feel bad and upset and angry at themselves. And what happens? That then ends up going into shame, and then we want to restrict, or we feel more upset and we feel more upset. So I say, let's jump off of that and start having the emotional eating solutions to emotional eating. I got to tell you that everybody I've talked to had some of those questions we talked about earlier with emotional eating. They have those components that happen, or those questions that those things show up for them. So emotional eating is complicated, and it's really about exploring your history and what led you. I talked last week in our videos during the challenge about my story of my parents got divorced. We didn't talk about it. And then they got divorced when I was about 8 years old, and lots of things happened. And I started to find comfort in food. Who knew? And I started to be offered diets and diet plates and low calorie food. And I would then secretly overeat. So those are my story. And I find as I tell the story, I remember the story, it helps me feel empathy for that girl that got caught up in a situation that she was too young to figure out what to do. And then once you use these coping mechanisms that are involved with food, you do it over and over and over again. Well, then your body feels out of control. You feel out of control. It was through the process of really reclaiming that part of my life and going, oh, I see what happened. It makes total sense. I have to look at how am I going to take care of myself now and understand what food means to me and what's going on for me, because food then became a way of caring about myself. It became a way of nurturing myself, right? So if we move nourishment into often nurturing ourselves, and food moved from that nourishment to nurturing, then we're nurturing ourselves just with food. That's not functional. It's just not functional. So what I wanted to do is understand what my relationship was to food, understand my body, and really get in touch with my body. When am I hungry? When am I full? What are my right foods? How do I determine what my right foods are? And I did that all through emotional eating solutions. So it's this way of coming back to, how do I have a different relationship with food? So why do we emotionally eat? It's very individual. Lots of things go into it. And I encourage you to explore what your reason is. or what led you to emotionally eat, what led you to overeat, so that you can then devise a different plan. I hope you join us in Emotional Eating Solutions because we talk about that. If you've been on these calls, if you've heard any of these videos, then I think you're one of us. I think you're one of us. So let's get you started figuring this out and get some kind of solution for you, because it's there. It's available to you. Okay, here's another question we got. Will I gain weight if I stop dieting? Oh my goodness. That is a big question, because I think you've noticed that as I talk about getting peace with food, I never say losing weight. I've never said that. I've never said losing weight. I've never said gaining weight. I don't know what your weight is going to be. So when we start intuitively eating, the fear is that you'll gain weight. Well, Kim, if I just eat when I'm hungry, stop when I'm full, eat what I want, I'm going to binge. Well, until you get really clear on what your hunger and full signals are and what your right foods are, yeah, you might. You probably will. And you might gain weight because you're trying to figure out what your right foods are. Do you have to gain weight? No. Are you going to lose weight? I don't know. What I have come to find out through my own personal process and working with hundreds of people is that I don't know what your right weight is. I don't know where your body's going to settle. A lot of times when we have this idea of what is the number on the scale we want to be, we have this number that's based on just a number, or it's based on the number when we were 16 years old, like a long ago number before we started having kids, this long ago number. And there is where it's this, I don't know, that I hear nutritionists talk about the set point of where your body feels good. And sometimes it's heavier than what you think. It's a way of jumping off of that. I have to lose a certain amount of weight. And actually, one of the things we talk about in the program is, do scales really work for you? And does keeping track of that number, because I know for me, keeping track of that number of weight was really triggering. And it was triggering because I'd never lose enough weight. Staying the same wasn't enough. Losing a quarter pound wasn't enough. Losing 5 pounds wasn't enough. It was never enough. So I had to jump off of that and have other ways of recognizing, how does my body feel and what's my right foods? And I got to say, as I've gotten older, my right foods have changed. Just my body is different. It rests differently. Its function is different. The food is different. It just is. I don't know if you'll gain weight in intuitive eating. And the point is we want to have a more realistic and loving relationship with our body. And also, I tell people all the time, you can't hate yourself into thin. And that's what we tend to do is, I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't do that because I need to be thin. I need to be this certain weight. Well, I just say, let's let go of that and love ourselves. Love ourselves into what our right size is. I don't know what that is. Generally, when we have a number, it's based on an old number in our head. So I like to jump off of that, and I encourage my clients to jump off of that. It becomes getting in touch with what's your right food, what's your right way for your body, and also what is your right movement. We haven't even talked about that. There is a point at which we want to engage in some movement. And I don't know what that is for your body. This is so individual and so personal. I also find that people will find that certain foods don't fit for their body, and they decide those aren't going to be their right foods because they get rashes, because their tummy gets upset, because they get IBS or diabetic, or certain things are going on, or high cholesterol. So there are certain things that are physical difficulties, physical problems that we've got to address. And you can do that in emotional or in intuitive eating, where you can look at food in a different way and address it in a way that works for you, and know what your right foods are. Just know what your right foods are. Let me see. I'm looking to see if there are any more questions. I don't see any here, and I don't see any more on the chat. I really recommend that you all check out Emotional Eating Solutions. It is my 8-week course. It's really good. Join Emotional Eating Solutions. It's only $297 at this point in time. We are open to having you. I'm so looking forward. I love that program. It is so good. It is so helpful. It will help you have a different relationship with food. Look back on the videos for the Anti-Diet Revolution. I am so excited that you were there, that you've been there throughout this series, this 5-video series. Those of you that have attended live, those that you watch later, those that are listening even later than that, I hope that you explore some way to have a different relationship with food. And if you find that now doesn't work for you, well, then keep us in mind and keep coming into the Feed Your Soul community Facebook page to get more information, or come on listen to the Feed Your Soul with Kim podcast. There are lots of ways you can stay connected. Get on my newsletter. There are lots of ways we can stay connected if this just doesn't feel right for you right now. But find something that you can do that's different, that helps you address food in a different way, so that you can put food in the nourishment category and nurturing in different ways. There are times where food is nurturing, but it cannot be your only way of nurturing yourself. And it cannot be the major way of nurturing yourself. We've got to have other things. I thank you so much for joining us. I am Kim McLaughlin. I'm from feedyoursoulunlimited.com. Thank you for joining us, and I look forward to talking to you later. Bye, you guys.